I've got a pretty perfect life, except that I'm not probably bringing in as much income as I want to, right? So my retirement goals, saving for a house, houses in the Bay Area are really expensive. Having a family is expensive. Saving for retirement, long-term care, you've got to like plan for the next 80 years,
Certainly.
right? And I've got a couple small businesses that I operate. Figuring out how to scale those is something that I think about. Whether I would like to pursue a full-time job, trading time for money, working as a product manager at a tech-enabled product company.
Work with what you have, right? And I love that you are looking beyond. I love that you have the gumption, right? To be like, hey, I'm ready for a full-time job. I'm ready to go out there and try that. But what I'm just hearing, what I'm just seeing, and as your friend here, is that I see that you have a lot of work built up here, and I don't want you to not utilize it to its fullest degree. And I think if you utilize it to the fullest degree, I think there might be a lot there that you realize that you have an edge that nobody else has. Yeah, so welcome to the Level Up with Conrad podcast. Here on this podcast, we bring on amazing guests with very diverse life experiences and really just help them come and have a breakthrough on whatever's blocking them in life, whatever they feel troubled by, and really help them level up. So I think without further ado, let's get our guest, Drew, to come introduce himself. He is a valued member of the community. He has been with us since 2019, and he's one of the first 100 members that have joined our community.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name's Drew. For those of you in tech product world, I'm a product manager. It's my day job. So for those of you in side hustle world, I'm an Airbnb host full-time. I do it year-round, and I host more than one person at a time, too. I host a lot of people. So that's my side gig. And then for those of you in small business world, I have a small business where I import a product and sell it domestically in the United States. So I've got a few different projects that I work on. I'm also, my hobby and my passion, the thing that I would do all day if money were no object, is I'm a gardener. So I've got a very ambitious gardening project in the backyard.
It's beautiful.
If you're into it, it's a food forest. So I'm cultivating a food forest in the backyard. I'm also a West Coast swing dancer. And
amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, so living here in San Jose and here with Conrad.
Yes. And Drew, I know we've had some time to catch up. I've only just finally seen you for the first time 4 days ago. So super psyched, have such a great experience with you. And I think throughout our discussions, we've kind of hit a few different themes of, I think the concept of progression in your life. Like, what is the next step for you? And so maybe I can ask you again, like, what does leveling up, this concept, mean to you? If you could visualize it, how might you describe it?
Yeah. I think for me, I've been thinking about it the last couple of days while we've been spending time together. And I have, in many ways, a pretty close to perfect life.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I have a ton of time flexibility. In my Airbnb hosting, I get to meet people from around the world who are interesting, exciting, passionate, technology oriented. We live in Silicon Valley, so people are coming here from around the world to work at, the top tech companies. And so that kind of youthful energy just, always keeps exciting conversations about me. I've got, and that income from my side hustle gives me a lot of flexibility where I can travel for a couple weeks and not worry about it, right? The basics are kind of paid for. So in a lot of ways, I've got a pretty perfect life, except that I'm not probably bringing in as much income as I want to, right? So my retirement goals, saving for a house, houses in the Bay Area are really expensive.
Absolutely.
Houses everywhere are really expensive. I don't know what's happening in the world.
To live, honestly, I can't believe actually that when I think about home ownership, I would expect that at some age I might be, getting into that. But, just seeing the prices here that we're expected to pay, millions and millions of dollars for a single family home. Yeah, I absolutely can understand and resonate with the pain points that, you and I'm sure many of the people living in the Bay Area and in any major city can feel.
Yeah, and it's not just the Bay Area. I mean, the Bay Area is crazy, but so is everywhere, right? Like we've been talking to friends from different states in the United States and from different countries, and it's just like the world is kind of experiencing this like housing price crunch right now. So anyway, my point is that having a family is expensive, buying a house is expensive, saving for retirement, long-term care. These are things, if we think we're going to live into our, 80s, 90s, hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, your great grandmother lived to be like
107,
107, right?
Yeah,
Like you've got good genes in your family.
Hopefully.
And so, I mean, but that's crazy, right? That means you've got to like plan for the next 80 years,
Certainly.
right? And that's just with the medical technology that your great grandma had access to, right? That doesn't include any of the advancements in medicines that are happening right now. So anyway, my point is that I really like my life, but the thing that's on my mind right now is probably just leveling up the amount of income that I make.
Yeah.
I'm skilled at saving and investing, so I think for me the part of the equation that I need to work on right now is probably just income. Leveling up in other areas of my life, I think that as I mentioned, I've got a couple small businesses that I operate. And so figuring out how to scale those is something that I think about, and maybe not scale in the sense that I'm increasing the top line.
Okay.
Maybe it just means that I'm removing responsibilities or work that I don't need to be involved, hands-on every single day. So maybe it's automation, delegation, delete, whatever that is, kind of scaling up. I think in other areas, I feel pretty solid. I am working on my health. We've talked about that some. And so for me, leveling up in health probably means losing more body fat. And that's a journey that I'm on right now. And I think I've kind of found a formula that works really well. So I think if I just kind of commit to that over the next 3 to 4 months, I expect to see similar progress to what I've seen the last few months. So I don't know. I guess those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. And thank you so much for sharing. And I think, I love that you have such a clear vision on like, hey, life is good, right? Yeah. Knowing that actually is, I think, a big piece of really figuring out what the next step is. Because my question to you would be like, hey, what parts of your life are you looking to sacrifice, right, for the sake of higher income? Because I think there's two paths here, right? And many infinite paths. So I'm going to simplify it down to you. There's two paths. One is that you lose some of your free time to go take a full-time role and get more income in, or seemingly I think a lot of your side hustles could potentially, like you said, scale up, and whether you grow laterally, meaning you have more side businesses to deal with, or each side business ends up making more revenue, like which kind of path kind of sounds the most right to you? And maybe just back to the basic question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice if you were to attain X amount of income goal?
Okay. Yeah, those are two very different questions. I think the question about whether I would like to pursue a full-time job, trading time for money, that's interesting in as far as working as a product manager at a tech-enabled product company is a useful, versatile, transferable skill.
Certainly.
That applies to entrepreneurship. So the things that I learn and that I will become better at by practicing product management will help me in being a business owner, and entrepreneur, and product creator, right? Yeah. Or a future founder. Like if I wanted to start a startup in the future, being a product manager and having a lot of deep experience and actually getting really good at that skill. Is very useful for being a startup founder. So it's not as if working a full-time job isn't interesting to me. There is a career path that's interesting to me. But my heart is in being my own boss, right? Like for all the reasons that I think anybody that has that desire can identify with, which is flexibility over your own time and schedule. It doesn't mean you don't work. It means that you get to choose when you work.
Absolutely.
And why you work, and more control on the projects you work on, and serving customers that you care about. I'd like to have really what I would like. I'd like to either make a really significant contribution in the tech world as either a product manager or a founder, co-founder, or I'd like to build like a portfolio of income generating assets, whether that was like, residential single family homes, right? Like rental properties, or maybe just a portfolio of small businesses, and use the cash flow of one business to kind of like buy
and build another
a little bit larger business and kind of like roll this cash flow snowball into like larger and larger businesses while maintaining the operations enough that, you know, I can still focus on what's next rather than getting deep into the business myself.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very apt way to put it. What I'm picking up a bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, there's a certain skill set, hopefully, that you're looking to learn by working in a bigger company, to then infuse that into your side hustle, you know, eventually main hustle kind of lifestyle. Is that something that I'm accurately picking up on? Or like if I made you the challenge, like, hey, why not just do the side business and grow that into a main business today? Like what would be, you know, the take?
My side businesses, yeah, I mean, you are correct that, you know, again, the appeal for me of working a full-time job as a product manager and to be I know you've worked in product, so this is something you understand, but for anybody who doesn't know what a product manager at a tech-enabled software product company does, it's a demanding job, right? It's not the kind of thing where you just work your 30 to 40 hours a week and set it down and go home. Product management work is the kind of thing where you're probably more likely working 40 to 60 hours a week with heavy responsibilities and expectations. So I think it can eat into your sleep schedule. I think it can eat into your health. These are some of the conversations we were having earlier.
Check it out on Level Up With Us podcast.
Level Up With Us.
Yes.
You can find that on Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, everywhere. And if you want to see us in the Tesla and you haven't seen that yet, you should be watching this on YouTube.
So product management is an interesting career path. I'm interested in developing those skills, but it's also demanding. Yeah. And when I've worked at startups in the past, it has taken a toll on my health.
I see.
Right. In not enough focus and prioritization of my sleep, my nutrition, my exercise, which resulted in health consequences. So that's something I want to be mindful of. And that's why, you know, option 2, which is why not just scale up your small businesses right now and start working on the portfolio? And what's the dream at retirement? The dream at retirement is a portfolio of like rental properties or a portfolio of businesses where you can live off the, you know, the passive income generated by those assets. Yeah. So why not just get started on that now? That's a valuable question, right? One, there's probably a lot for me to learn in that full-time role as a product manager. There's probably a lot for me to reap and gain that I've not even looked at or discovered yet. So that might be one reason to go the career path. Another reason might be that my small businesses don't generate a ton of income. It's enough to like live comfortably for a bachelor. Yeah. It's not a lot to support a family on, and certainly not enough to like buy a house in the Bay Area, right? Like, so, you know, I would say for, you know, one of the things I'm considering right now is acquiring a small business. A cousin of mine has a small business that he's looking at selling. He's operated it for like 20 years and he's kind of like ready to move on and do his next chapter. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I should buy his business, right? And yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting thing when you're you know, hustling and trying to like figure out like, okay, how do I make my way in the world, right? There's like a lot of paths, and I guess maybe it's harder than just saying like, oh, this is my job, this is the career that I do. If I don't have this job, I just, you know, go get another job doing the same thing. I guess part of the problem is like there's so many side hustles you could focus on, so many different kinds of businesses you could focus on that maybe a lack of focus is part of the problem. Okay. So I don't know.
Do you find it hard to choose like what to do next?
You know, we talked about startup ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were talking earlier, like, hey, what's an idea for a startup you haven't been able to shake that's just like with you? Yeah. I think for a lot of people that are interested in entrepreneurship, like maybe we have a couple ideas like bouncing around, and you don't, maybe it's hard to know which one's worth pursuing, right? Yeah. Like I'll call up, you know, some of my cousins, like I said, are small business owners or entrepreneurs. And so I'll call them up and I'll be like, oh my God, I think, you know, I've got
this will be the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, wait for it. Chocolate covered dates. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no. Like, it's going to be big around the holiday season. And then, you know, a couple of weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, and I'm like, yeah, dark chocolate covered dates. Like, I don't know, maybe that could be a great product. But I'm like, you think about it in the moment
Sure.
and you call someone, you're like trying to get a little bit of validation, see if there's anything there. And I think sometimes it's hard to know if you're that kind of person who's looking and actively interested in like, what is the idea that could really turn into a business? And whether this is software or physical goods, like it's same problem. You know, it's like it's hard to know if you're onto something, right? Until you've actually gone out and tested it in the market.
Yeah. No, I appreciate this perspective, and I think you've thought very deeply about it. And one thing I'm really picking up, and again, please correct me if you think I'm a bit off here, but you know, let's take these two examples that you drawn out, right? A is going to a company and learning the skill sets, right? Learning something that will help you be a good, better founder, right? Make better decisions. And B is buying over a small business that is already successful, already generating revenue, and hopefully growing that revenue a bit more. Both of them seem like to me like, you know, there's a certain, you know, confidence thing that is like, hey, maybe there's something out there that I don't know yet. Maybe they figure something out, and maybe I should just do that thing first before I figure out my thing. Is that something that resonates with you a little bit?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think I tend to approach most things in the world with beginner's mind, right? Like I assume that I know, I assume that I always have something to learn, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good way to walk around the world in general. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe there is a little bit of like following success, maybe in this way. I'm like, maybe I'm maybe I'm evaluating potential paths where there are signs of success visible already.
I see. Do you think you currently have success with your current side businesses and small businesses?
Yeah, and I think just like we were talking about how like the terms better or best or problematic if you don't define them, I think success is the same way. I think my small businesses are successful in that they provide me a, you know, really great lifestyle, like I said, at the financial requirements of a bachelor.
Yeah,
right? Like,
understood.
yeah, at that definition, these are successful businesses.
Okay.
But we talked about scale, right? And these are not scaled enough to support a family.
Okay.
And much less to like snowball into a residential real estate portfolio or something like that.
One thing I'd like to just ask, maybe not so antagonistic as a challenge, but you know, I think that there's a lot to learn certainly out there. I'm no stranger to, I'll be the first to say that I don't know everything, right? But it does make me curious in that, like, I think you're an expert in what you do. I've seen the hacker house that you've built. I think it's wonderful. I think you figured out so many things. You've done this for 10 years, right? There's so many things you figured out, so many best practices, so many SOPs you've implemented, so many mistakes that you've done, and so many learnings you've had, right? Wins and failures both have driven your growth. And so hearing that your perspective is that this can't scale, and that you're trying to figure out like what someone else has figured out so that you can scale that instead. I just wonder if that's really the answer, and if that's really the, you know, reality of the situation, perhaps. Because I think every business has opportunity to scale. It's just what kind of scaling you're looking for, right? Maybe this house specifically can't get more residents. You can't just, you know, maybe you could put 20 beds in the lawn, right? Sure. But like, what is blocking you from getting the second house? What is blocking you from getting the third house, right? What if you got all the houses in this one block, right? Like, why can't that be a form of scaling?
It certainly could. I think there's a few things that are interesting in that question. One is I just have decided that this isn't the business that I want to ride my entire career on, right? And part of that has to do with the fact that I think I've learned the lessons from this business that I'm going to learn. Obviously, there would be new lessons that would come if you were scaling into more and more and more properties. This is essentially a like property management business, right? If we were to abstract it, this is like property management, right? And so certainly I could, and I have done this actually. I've managed both the Airbnb that we're at now, and I've managed Airbnbs in other cities.
Yeah, and you get 20% on their revenue.
And I've managed Airbnbs for other people.
Yeah.
So at one point, I was managing 4 different Airbnbs at the same time.
Sure.
In 3 different cities.
Yeah.
and that's fine. But
Okay.
one, I don't think it's like a great business. I don't think the economics of it are fantastic.
Okay.
And two, I think I've kind of learned the lessons, right? Like I think Stephen Covey is the one who said, maybe it's Stephen Covey Jr., said some people think they have 20 years of experience when really what they have is 1 year of experience 20 times.
Okay.
Does that make sense to
I
you, right?
understood. Yeah.
And so I think Airbnb is the type of business where like I was probably learning new novel lessons for the first year, 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And then after that, you kind of know most of what you're going to know from that business. So I think I've learned what I'm going to learn from this business.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm riding like a fantastic wave, right? Like that's part of it too. It's like Professor Scott Galloway, are you a fan of his? Says it's better to be you got to make sure you're riding a good wave. Like you can be a mediocre operator in like, you know,
Crazy industry.
in a
that's
crazy,
already,
an industry that's really blowing up.
Yeah.
You're going to do much better than being like a fantastic operator operating an Airbnb.
Okay,
Right?
I see. So you've decided that this is like, you've learned all the lessons you want here. You don't feel passionate about this business anymore?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about this business, but it's just not like the career that I want to live out for the next 4
What's
years.
the difference? Can you help me out?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, so hosting people from around the world, especially people who are interested in technology, is an audience that I'm very interested in serving.
Okay.
Right. So I am passionate about my customers, but that's different than, is it a great business? Are the economics fantastic? Is this a career that you'd want to scale? You know, so I'm passionate about what I do, but I that doesn't mean it's like a fantastic wave to ride, or necessarily that I want to dedicate, you know, my career to this, because of course I have other passions too.
Sure.
Yeah, so
And just to confirm, like the user is good, the business is mediocre.
I
Okay.
think that's a great way to put it. The
Sure.
customers are great. I
Okay.
love my customers.
Okay.
The economics are decent. They're fine
Okay.
for a bachelor.
Sure. Let's anchor on that. Absolutely. And I can understand that, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving forward from here, like I just want to ask, like, so if you were able to serve this still specific user in different ways that is trendy, so to speak, right? That would be a fine business for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So then my question then is like elaborating on that is, what's stopping you from pitching new products to your current, because you have an audience. Like that's why I'm trying to figure out, like when I think about like when I'm trying to build a business, what is my competitive edge, right? Why me? Why now? Okay. And then so when I think about that, I think about, okay, what resources do I have on hand, right? Some people have assets, they have houses. Okay, sure, I'll rent it out. That's an easy win for them, right? And for you, I see the easy win as like you have like 10 to 12 people coming in through your doors every day, right? What's stopping you from selling them something that might be your next big break?
I think that's insightful, and I don't think there is anything stopping me from finding other offerings for the same audience that I'm already serving.
Okay.
I don't have anything top of mind that would fit the bill.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about having a podcast, right? Is that you can both talk to more people, but then also show them other things in your world and your universe that they may be interested in.
Certainly.
But yeah, I don't, so it's a good question. I don't know what else I would deliver to this customer base necessarily.
Okay. Well,
Doesn't mean there's nothing there.
Obviously, yeah. And let's hold that thought because I want to expand this more, right? Because I think this lateral thinking can apply in many areas right now. And I think we're onto something. So let's explore this a bit more. The question is, okay, so seemingly it seems like there are resources at your disposal that you could be leveraging for a business, right? That is what we're identifying. You have customers, maybe you can sell them something different. What other resources might you have that could potentially help catapult a business that, you know, is at your disposal, right? That's in your fingertips.
Sure. I actually wanted to hear your answer to that question. I know you don't know every facet of my life, but I was wondering if there are things that you think I have that are competitive advantages that maybe I'm, not really appreciating fully. So if you have answers to that question, feel free to share. I think that I've got, you're right. I've got a network of people. I've been hosting for 10 years. So I've got not just
Not just the 12,
the
right?
guests
Yeah.
that I know right now, but I've got thousands of people that I've hosted.
Absolutely.
Not that I've kept in contact with all of them,
Sure.
it's kind of a dispersed contact list, and some of them I I'm connected to on LinkedIn, some I've stayed friends with, some
Sure.
I'd have to like cold email, but I've hosted thousands of people.
Yeah.
I live in the Bay Area, which is not insignificant, right? This is where a lot of
innovation here.
a lot of stuff's happening in this
Yeah.
area, right? A lot of really driven, curious, talented people come to this area. So I think geographically, I'm in a great area.
Yeah.
I've of course got the natural resources that I was born with. I've got my intellect and my privilege as a educated American.
Sure.
So those kind of things are not not to be dismissed. Like that's something that I recognize as a privilege. Assets that I have at my disposal. I mean, I've got some cash saved. If I wanted to buy a business, for instance, I've got a little bit of cash. I've got credit that I can tap. I have not built a social media presence. I haven't built a podcast or YouTube channel or anything like that. I do have in my other side business, I have a different customer base, completely disconnected from this one. And then I guess in my product management career, I've got relationships to, some startup companies and some YC alum.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So combining all those, like I'm trying to help you find patterns, right? Seemingly you have, and by the way, I'm going to also say this on your behalf, like you as an individual, you're very kind, very caring, very charismatic, right? And I think that rubs off on the people that you meet, right? And my experience of you, right? And again, I'm sure I can speak on many people's behalf. I've interviewed actually a lot of people in the house. They've all said Drew's a fantastic person and they'd love to talk to you again and be part of your house again, right? So that's a quality you exude, right? So obviously your number one strength and also your current asset, I think, is the relationships that you hold with so many people around the world, right? Thousands, right? If not more. That includes both individuals, right, who are making their way up the corporate ladder, right? Students, right? You said students come through here, startup founders, right? And we're going to explore that further, but that is number one segment. That is number one skill set of Drew West, right? You have a great network that are willing to support you if you give them the opportunity, okay? The second one is I think you have great business fundamentals, right? I think you know how to, spin up, and maintain a business, right? There's a lot of system building there that maintains in building small businesses like your paper cup business, right? That you do the importing, as well as doing Airbnb, right? I think that is also a very good asset, right? And that is a technical skill that you own, right? Okay. And the third one, seemingly to me, that it all kind of combines together is I think you have the ability to kind of, how can I say this? Like when you are, I guess, building all these relationships and building all these different connections, I think you have the ability to also influence them to help you in many different ways, right? And I think that itself, you also can't turn off, right? Like that's an opportunity for you, right? And when I talk about that, like, and I try to align that with the future vision that you have, okay, I want to be a product manager. Does that really touch customers? Is that a customer-facing role? Not really, right? That's more like, I mean, yes, you could say that is the case, but like you're not directly leveraging your network to utilize that skill. That skill actually to me sounds like, hey, I have something I can sell to someone because it help people bring value to them, right? And I think that is something that you can honestly 100% leverage. And the question is like, what do you sell them, right? What do you think you can offer them? And I think the best way to go around that, right, and you probably know this too, is to ask them, what can you do for them, right? And I think as you keep asking this question, instead of having to come up with chocolate cover date ideas, right? And obviously we all want validation. That's 100% what we want, right? We go to other people and we say, hey, can you validate my idea? I have this brand new idea. It's going to change the world. Please tell me that it's good. I think something that works for me, right, and I'm empowering you, is I ask them, hey, what do you think you need today? Like, what are you missing in your life, right, that you need to build? And the thing is, as you talk to more people, as you talk to 10, 20, 30, 100 people, you'll eventually realize that, hey, all these people have the same thing. And maybe if I just build it for them, they'll trust me enough for them to come to me for the answer, right? And I think that is how that kind of comes together for me when I kind of hear your story. But of course, I think, because I think this has to be a questioning back to you, is that, what do you think holds you back from going to these people and serving them with a different product?
I think part of I'll answer that in two ways. One, I think I do suffer from being spread a little bit too thin. This is one of the perils of being, a small business entrepreneur, where you've got your full-time job and your side gig and the other side gig and your girlfriend and your hobbies
everything and all.
And then you've got these, things that are all important to you, and maybe there are ways for me to get more time in the day. Maybe I could automate, delegate, delete, and kind of like scale up my operations in a way where I didn't have to do so much of it. That's certainly, there's some potential there. But I think there is also just something to be said for, like, maybe you're focusing on too many small businesses and maybe you need to pick one and scale it, right? I think Alex Ramosi, kind of like just go in on the one thing that you're gonna,
You're sure on.
that you're sure on. So that's one thing. And the other thing too is I think it's important to know, when we're talking about our audience, and feel free to push back if you don't think this is true. When you're talking about the audience that you're looking at, can I deliver a different service or an additional, service or product for them? Who is that audience, right? And in the case of my Airbnb business, oftentimes the people I'm hosting are students, right? What did our friend say today that we were having lunch with? She said students are so, cost conscious. She said, as long as it's, super affordable, because I'm just here to go to school, right? So a large portion of the audience that I'm serving in my Airbnb is very price sensitive and doesn't have a lot of money.
That's fine.
And so they may not be an audience that's really looking to spend much more money on other products or services.
Sure. Let's challenge that, right?
Sure.
Tell me, okay, I'm going to answer this in two ways, right?
Sure.
As well. But the first one is there a possibility of bringing them on as users of a product? Let's first acknowledge that. Would they be a user of a product? Let's say it was free, right? Would they use it?
Sure.
Yeah, sure, right.
Sure.
And if they trusted you as the person that's already housing them and giving them a place to sleep, you're already giving them value.
Yep.
If you offer them additional value, would you trust that? Would they trust that?
Sure.
Right. Okay, cool. That's one. Second one is, do we know of any businesses that don't charge their direct users any money, but still are $1 billion company?
Yeah, of course.
Sure, absolutely, right? There are other effects that you can sell them advertisements, right? You can, having an audience, once you capture that is valuable, right?
Yep.
So what I'm trying to say here, Drew, is that I think you are definitely underestimating your power a bit here. I think you have a lot of power, right? Not only have you brought the trust of people, but I think I also want to add that you're a great communicator. I think you're very measured as you talk, right? You think a lot, you're a deep thinker, and you know how to communicate things in a way that will help people make good decisions, right? And that's what you want. And so when I think about this, is that it's even better. You're not telling them you want to sell them something. You just want to help them, right? And I think that's actually what you want to do. Like you're not coming into this with like the very mindset of like, hey, I want to take every dollar from your pocket, right? They don't have that many dollars. We're all accepting of that, right? So how else can we support these people, right? It doesn't have to be coming from them as a direct, paying customer. There's many, many ways to monetize a user, right? We all know this. We've seen this in different forms of, entrepreneurship. And I think that's my challenge to you, is that, like, do you really need them to pay, right? And instead, if we just figure out the problem, right? Imagine this, right? Imagine you went to even a big company or a consulting company or whatever, and you said, hey, I have 1,000 students that need this problem, right? And you just even sold them a business idea. Hey, they need this. I think they'll pay you for that, right? I'm pretty sure they would pay you that. It'll give you a cut of equity or something, right? Because you're saying that I have an active user base that is frothing at the mouth for a solution. As long as someone builds it, they will use it. And then as long as they use it, you have 1,000 users, right, in this one vicinity, which can scale to 10,000, which can scale to 100,000, which then I am 100,000% sure that is valuable to some company out there. But again, I think there needs to be a certain level of acceptance here, right? I think from you, where I just really want to break through and I really want to challenge this, is that like, okay, let's assume that it's because you didn't have something to sell them, that you didn't want to offer this. Is there anything else that would block you from going to them and being like, hey, you know, how can I help you today? Like, what is the biggest thing that's on your mind? What's the biggest thing that's blocking you? And if I built, like, I mean, you don't have to ask this, but like, if you built that, would you have the confidence to go up to them and say, hey, try this?
Yeah, no, I think as far as the relationships and soft skills, you know, I think you're right. Everything's in place for me to learn from those customers and learn what else they might need, what other needs could be served, and to develop ideas for products or services around that. You know, there's no blocker there. I think it's probably the blocker is just my own thoughts of how I want to prioritize my time and spend my time.
Sure.
You know, that's probably what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked at the very beginning, is like, do you like these customers, right?
Yeah.
If you don't like these customers, we don't have to have this conversation, right? You can go to another customer, go to another industry, right? But if you do at some part of your mind, right, have passion for serving this group, right? I think it would be a great pity, right, if you didn't try your best to see what you can possibly do for these people while you have that chance, right? Yeah. And I think, you know, once you do get a full-time job, let's say, and you don't have time to do this anymore, you're able to have like a family of your own and you're not having this, having access to this is much harder, right? Actually, and if you think about any startup founder out there who's trying to serve this exact target customer, they'll tell you how many thousands of VC dollars they're spending just to try to get these access to these guys, right? Yeah. So that's interesting, right? Yeah. Maybe that's even another part of the business that you could do. It's like, hey, I have a willing customer base that might want to talk to you, right? That might want to be served. Maybe you can even sell that as an offer to any company that's trying to sell services for students, right? But all I'm just trying to say here is that work with what you have, right? And I love that you are looking beyond. I love that you have the gumption, right? To be like, hey, I'm ready for a full-time job. I'm ready to go out there and try that. But what I'm just hearing, what I'm just seeing, and as your friend here, is that I see that you have a lot of work built up here, and I don't want you to not utilize it to its fullest degree. And I think if you utilize it to the fullest degree, I think there might be a lot there that you realize that you have an edge that nobody else has, right? Or at least they'll pay a lot of money for, right? And you're getting it for free. And now let's talk about the cost of the time it takes and how spread thin you are. One thing I can definitely advise you in on this is that I always make sure that how I spend my time ends up, you know, always being cross-functional. It always helps me in some other way. Like there is no wasted time, so to speak, because maybe when I'm having a conversation, I'm thinking about how to implement that in my book, right? Maybe when I'm, you know, visiting friends, right, across the state, I'll have a podcast, right? You know, always try to think about how you can kind of, you know, have a win-win situation, right? In the interactions you give. I always come at from the place of like, how can I help? How can I be helpful? How can I give value to the people who I'm around, right? And through that effort, 100% that will come back. And I think that is what makes me very happy about the way I do my businesses. And I think that's something that hopefully can inspire you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I do notice that you do approach things with a very, you know, help forward approach. So that's really, really great.
So real quick, this episode is proudly supported by the Cox3 Family Foundation. We are a community of co-creators and collaborators. And what that means is that we want to bring together amazing people like you, right, and like Drew, to come and build something together, right? I think it's so much more fun if you can come together and really, really find out how your passion and purpose can be stimulated, right, by creating something of value together. And there's no better place than go to the community, because there's so many people that are looking for solutions, looking for answers to life, looking for ways to make their life better. And if we all come together and build something that we need, then that's something that the world needs. And so Drew, you were one of the first few people that had joined our community. I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, the first 100. How did you enjoy the community? Like, how did it help you? I think especially during the pandemic.
Sure. It is a lot of fun. It's a really great group of people, very, very kind, very empathetic, very willing to kind of meet you where you are, right? And kind of talk through whatever challenges you're currently working on, whether those were personal or business, whether it was emotional or income, right? Like it's a group of people that is really there for the right reasons, and to kind of support each other. For me, it was a really great community to belong to during the pandemic, because that was obviously a really challenging time for everybody when we were all looking for community, and finding it at CoX3 was really valuable. So I'm grateful for what you've built, and yeah, I'll just reiterate, definitely a fun group of people, useful templates and insights and frameworks, and curious, inquisitive minds to bounce things off of.
Thank you so much. And so we're so excited. We are now building so many amazing things. So many new projects are coming up just literally every single week. So if you want to get involved, want to find out ways how you can help benefit the world and build together and just hang out, like you said, in an amazing community, find amazing friends. If you guys want to join, please join us over at the.x3.family and check out all our resources. With that, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, no, I like your point. I mean, it is a really good point that I have relationships and access to, students, engineers, designers, people who are coming to Silicon Valley, to work, to study. I've, both currently have relationships with people who are traveling here, but 10 years worth of relationships as well, right? And so there are a lot of people that if I...
Activated is the term.
Activated, yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, really put my mind to, solving a problem for that audience and saying like, okay, I have the relationships. All I need to do is like reach out to them and say, hey, this is Drew. I hosted you back in 2015 when you were attending, Galvanize in San Francisco or whatever it is. Like, I have so many of those relationships that that is probably, really big edge, a big advantage that a lot of people don't have, right?
Absolutely.
And that's just through, I guess, that's just a benefit of the work I've done over the last 10 years, right? Is that I've met a lot of people in Silicon Valley, right? Who many of them have stayed here and many of them have traveled, right? So at this point, I've got a very distributed network of friends and potential customers if I could find a need that they, had that I could fill. Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And to add on to that, I think, it's really interesting to me, at least, when we talk about a topic like this, because I think, it's absolutely normal, I think, to try to see where's the greener grass, right? Where's the easier kind of path to walk to get to where I want? And obviously there's also lots of times that we're kind of, disengaged, I think, with the things that we're currently doing. And I think that's absolutely normal. And I don't think we should blame ourselves for that, right? I want us to walk away from here knowing that there's a fresh thing we can try rather than lamenting the things we didn't try so far, right? And I want to just make sure that I'm empathetic to that struggle because, hell, I've been in that place too, right?
Sure.
And on top of that, though, I want to say that because though that we are so close to the things we already have, we don't end up realizing that how powerful it is until someone else can just help us wake up to it. But it's all still within you, right? You worked hard these last 10 years to get here, right? It wasn't easy, right? You've learned so much. You've built yourself as a person. And I see all that as I see you today, right? And I think while you say that you have learned all the lessons that you think you need to learn, one thing, 10 times, right? But I think hopefully through this conversation, we're helping you realize that, that's one vertical of it, but where's the lateral, where's the horizontal move for all these things? And again, back to the initial thing that I picked up from the beginning is that, hey, More than happy for you to try to go out and venture out. But before you do that, see what you can do with the existing assets you have and how you can reinvest that to build the career and life that you want. Because I don't want you to lose this. I think you have a beautiful life. I think you love being in a life where you can garden whenever you want, right? When you can have this kind of experience. And I think if you can continue serving these people and continue having amazing ideas that not just come from you but are validated by the other people, right? I think that will give you a confidence boost like no other. Like I will promise you this: the first time you hear that they have an idea that makes sense, and another guy chimes in and says, "I have that problem too," and another person comes in and you call someone on the phone and say, "Hey, 3 people told me that this problem. Do you have this problem?" They're like, "I do too." You're onto something, right? And the beauty of it too, by the way, is that talking to these people that are smart, right? Engineers, students, you mentioned like many students went to Stanford or going to different schools in the area. They're working at different startups that are reputable. They obviously know what they're doing. They probably have ideas on how to solve this problem themselves. And guess what? They're too busy to work on it. So they're going to ask you to work on it. They're like, "Hey, Drew, you care so much about me. You gave me a call out of nowhere and you asked me how I was. And you asked me how you can help me, right? Well, this is how I have problems. And hey, if you help me, I'll help you too, right? No doubt. And I think that, my friend, is your superpower. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. That is a fresh perspective.
I'm happy. Yeah. So I think this is a good moment for me to also like kind of give you a break and say like if there's anything you might want to kind of share, I guess, to the audience that might be in your shoes, right? Is there anything that you'd like to kind of tell them about, like as you're ruminating about this as well, of course, but anything that you think might be, interesting to the audience that, you've been thinking about a lot?
Okay. Who do you think is your audience? Can you describe?
So actually, like the purpose of this podcast is, I'm actually going to label it like, like your persona, right, learns how to deal with this problem, right? So my goal with this podcast is to have real stories with people like that are in various situations and help other people who might be in your shoes, right? Whether they watch it now or in 10 years, right? And be able to know that there is a way out, that they don't need to be sitting here in this car, right? To have the same insights that you've had today, right? So I think for me, it's just a chance for you to kind of tell the audience, like, if they were in your shoes, right? Someone that is literally you, maybe just one day ago, right? Or 1 year ago, what kind of advice would you give them?
Based on where I am right now, and this isn't necessarily taking advantage of the conversation we just had, just the things that I'm thinking about in my point in life right now, is I think it's great to find a side hustle that works well to support the lifestyle you want. I think you should absolutely go for that. I can say it's been a fantastic, valuable asset for me to have a side hustle that gives me the kind of lifestyle that I really cherish so much. But I think that it's important to realize when a thing is a side hustle and not a career, right? So that's just one thing I would caution. I mean, people do ask me sometimes about the Airbnb because Airbnb is a cool business, and people come through and they go, maybe I should be an Airbnb host. Like, maybe could I do this? Like, could I, have an Airbnb house in LA or whatever? And I'm happy to talk with people, but that's oftentimes the, one of the caveats that I try and make sure they hear when I'm talking to them is like, this can be a great, income generating business that's mostly passive. It doesn't really require all your full-time energy, but just realize like this is probably your side gig. This is not like your full-time career. It just doesn't generate enough income. And I think probably a lot of side hustles are like that. So the reason I'm saying that is because I think that it can be a bit of a trap where it's just comfortable enough, right? Where you can rest on your laurels a little bit, but you really should still be pursuing your main career. Not just relying on your side hustle. So that's one thing that I've, kind of reflected on and that I would want somebody in my shoes to know.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Yeah. So my addition to that is I think absolutely like don't get sucked into your side hustle. I think understand what is side. And for me, how I define side is like, is this something that I want to spend the rest of my life doing? And I think that's something that's really good that you've identified. Like, hey, rest of my life is not just running a Airbnb for this group of people. But I hope that through this conversation that you just heard between me and Drew is that like, that doesn't mean that whole side hustle is just, thrown out to the wayside, right? No, obviously not, right? It's served you well, right? It's giving you that, passive income, right? Might not be the infinite passive income that you're looking for, right? Just depends on what side hustle you get. Some people are lucky and that side becomes like really just a very good trend and the wave goes. But what I hope to really exaggerate here and show you is that, the process of building something on the side has so many more dividends than you believe, because simply you might not have the perspective to realize that that is an asset that you hold. And all it is just waking up to that and having someone help you kind of see that. But ultimately, all that works by you, right? I'm just helping you unlock yourself. And I think that's the beauty of what hopefully you and maybe other people at home might get today. Yeah. Awesome. Do you feel comfortable with that? Do you feel like we can end here?
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Drew. I really appreciate your time here. And thank you, everyone watching at home. If that's been helpful for you, please let us know down in the comments. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.